Lamashtu plaque. Lamashtu was a demon of Mesopotamian mythology and the daughter of the sky god Anu. She menaced women during childbirth and kidnapped their babies while they were breastfeeding. In addition to gnawing on children's bones and sucking their blood, Lamashtu committed numerous other misdeeds, including eating men, interrupting people's sleep, destroying nature, infesting freshwater bodies such as rivers and lakes, and inflicting disease. She's often depicted as having a hairy body, the head of a lioness, and a donkey's teeth and ears, as well as long fingers and fingernails, and bird feet with sharp talons. Images of Lamashtu typically show her atop a donkey, nursing a pig and dog, and with snakes in her hands. So how are you supposed to defend yourself from this monster? This plaque, housed at the Louvre in Paris, was created sometime during the 2nd or 1st millennium BC. It was intended to be hung over someone's bed and designed to protect them against Lamashtu's evil behavior. The plaque's reverse side features Lamashtu's husband and rival Pazuzu, the bearer of storms and drought. He has a man's body, the head of a lion or a dog, eagle's talons, 2 pairs of wings, and a scorpion's tail. As the demon of the southwest wind, Pazuzu was blamed for bringing drought during dry seasons and locusts and storms during rainy seasons. Ironically, despite his sinister qualities, Pazuzu was occasionally invoked for protection from evil. He was known for guarding pregnant women and their children from Lamashtu, which perhaps explains why his likeness is on the reverse side of this Lamashtu tablet, where he is shown overlooking Lamashtu in a protective manner. Iron Hand. Gotz von Berlichingen was a German mercenary during the 1500s, a soldier for hire who fought for the people who could afford him. During the battle in the year 1504, the 23-year-old lost his arm. Some rumors claim that the impact hit von B's sword, causing him to cut off his own arm, while others say that the cannonball itself hit him, but nobody knows for sure exactly what happened. During that time, the loss of an arm usually meant the end of your mercenary career, but the adventurous fighter was not willing to give up his fierce lifestyle, and he had to improvise for his missing arm. Soon after the battle, von Berlichingen began wearing an iron replacement limb, complete with a hand, created for him by an unknown maker. It was equipped with hinges that enabled the 4 fingers to curl inward and grasp a sword, and was decorated with carved fingernails and wrinkles along the knuckles. He continued on with his career and earned a more ruthless reputation than ever, not just as a mercenary but also as a gambler and a 16th century loan shark. Von B was also known, in the words of Dr. Sharon Rahm, who wrote about his career, as a Robin Hood who protected the peasants against their oppressors. He would kidnap nobles for ransom and attack merchants for their goods, and he became known as the Gotz of the Iron Hand. Eventually, he upgraded to a newer, nicer prosthetic arm. His previous one had been a bit inflexible, but this one had jointed knuckles, which were better for gripping. He could fight, hold a sword, and the reins of his horse no problem. Spring-loaded mechanisms inside the hand locked the fingers into place. It is now on display in a castle museum in his native town in Germany. New Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls were first found by shepherds wandering across the northwest shore of the Dead Sea way back in 1946. The discovery was a complete accident, and the news of what was found caused a rush of thieves to pillage all of the caves in search of treasures that might be sold on the black market. It wasn't until the 1950s that proper excavations began, and by that time looters had already taken most of the priceless fragments of the scrolls. Nonetheless, thousands of Dead Sea Scrolls were still discovered, totaling about 900 manuscripts removed from 11 different caves. Over the past few years, many of these stolen pieces have slowly appeared in private antique markets. In an attempt to find additional scrolls that weren't pillaged, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem teamed up with the Israel Nature and Parks Authority to create Operation Scroll. The team went back to the Dead Sea and searched all the nearby areas for anything that may have been left behind. They actually found some very interesting stuff. In one of the caves, researchers discovered broken jars that had once held scrolls, along with a heap of ancient flint blades and arrowheads, suggesting that the caves had been used around 10,000 years ago by our Neolithic ancestors. Inside another cave, archaeologists came upon a sealed jar that contained a relatively undamaged scroll. However, when they took it back to the lab and did testing, they found that the scroll was blank. The scroll had likely been placed inside of the jar in preparation to be written on. Unfortunately, the team also found old pickaxe heads in the same cave, suggesting that the thieves back in the early 1950s did a much better job of stealing the Dead Sea Scrolls than archaeologists did of finding them. Even though no new scroll ended up being found, the other new discoveries made the project totally worth it. The Thracian chariot. Ancient horse and chariot burials found in Bulgaria have been quite the mystery for archaeologists. A team led by Veselin Ignatov discovered an ancient wooden chariot in 2008 that dates back 2,000 years. It was discovered covered in bronze and would have been decorated in colorful scenes from Thracian mythology. A year later, in 2009, the same team of researchers discovered a brick tomb with the remains of a man adorned in armor, very near to where the chariot was found. The man was discovered buried with gold coins, rings, and a silver cup showing the image of the Greek god Eros. It's not exactly clear who this man was, but scientists believe he was probably a nobleman or even an ancient ruler of Thrace, the extinct kingdom that thrived in what is now Bulgaria. The Greeks and Romans described the Thracians as barbarian tribal people who were very warlike and were often hired as mercenaries, but much about the Thracians remains a mystery. It's one thing to hear what everyone was saying about them, and another entirely to find archaeological evidence of their culture and values. They clearly also loved horses and jewelry. Noblemen were frequently buried near their chariots starting around 2,500 years ago. The practice gained popularity in some places during the Roman Empire, lasting from between 2,100 to 1,500 years ago. Chariots represented prestige, authority, and unyielding power, and were most likely used to travel in the afterlife. The horses buried with the chariot were probably sacrificed to accompany their ruler, along with other animals like dogs and sheep. They were also buried covered in metal decorations. Surprisingly, burials like this are commonly found all throughout Bulgaria, but it is very hard to find chariot tombs that haven't been looted. Mr. Ignatov says that maybe 90% of the tombs have been completely or partially destroyed by treasure hunters who then sell the precious objects abroad. Mud mummy. Scientists were baffled by the discovery of the only known ancient Egyptian mud mummy. The deceased individual is wrapped in hardened mud, which, in the researchers' words, is a mortuary treatment not previously documented in the Egyptian archaeological record. That means it's the first time. It's possible that the mummy was damaged and that its preparers used the technique to repair it. The mud wrapping may be an imitation of the elite practice of mummifying high-ranking members of society with imported materials made from resin, which was common from around 1294 BC to 945 BC, a time period that saw the transition from the New Kingdom to the 21st dynasty. Mud is a more affordable material, lead researcher Karen Sawada told Life Science. The mummy, which dates back to 1207 BC, somehow ended up in a much newer coffin meant for a young woman. But why? Sir Charles Nicholson, an English-Australian politician, acquired the mummy during the 19th century and donated it to the University of Sydney in 1860. Researchers believe that the dealers who sold Nicholson the mummy placed it into a mismatched coffin to make the set more complete, which fetched more money than selling the components separately. The coffin dates back to around 1000 BC, making it around 200 years younger than the mud mummy, and is inscribed with a woman's name, reading Merua or Meruta. The mud mummy appears to be a female who died between the ages of 26 and 35. Within a generation or two of her death, her remains were damaged, and someone, perhaps grave robbers, stabilized the body using the mud wrapping technique. The discovery is helping scientists better understand ancient Egyptian burial practices, and a reminder that there is still a lot we don't know. Ancient fruitcake in Antarctica. Would you eat cake that was over 100 years old? Turns out Antarctica is the perfect place to store your food for the next generation. Just kidding. But scientists have actually discovered the oldest fruitcake ever. Yeah, fruitcake. It's common knowledge that fruitcakes can stay around for a pretty long time. But conservators in Antarctica have come upon a fruitcake that lasted for quite a bit longer than expected. It's 110 years old, still fresh in the wrapper. Do you even like fruitcake? Does anybody out there like fruitcake? Apparently explorers do, because it's a good way to keep up your calories in the freezing weather. This particular piece was found in one of the very first buildings ever constructed in Antarctica, probably brought over in 1910 during the Terra Nova expedition of the famous explorer Robert Falcon Scott. According to the Antarctic Heritage Trust, it was even documented that Scott took this exact brand of fruitcake with him on the expedition. It was on the list of supplies. It looks like nobody wanted to eat it, and the cake got left behind, just sitting in the abandoned structure for over 100 years until it was just recently discovered. But here's the really amazing part. The cake itself is actually so well preserved that it's almost edible. Of course, this is thanks to the cold Antarctic weather, but it's still pretty impressive. The cake was part of over 1,500 other artifacts, all collected from the 2 ancient huts at Cape Adare in Antarctica. Ancient Church and the Last Supper. Archaeologists working in Jerusalem have discovered the remains of an ancient, long-lost Byzantine church, as well as the foundations of an old Jewish ritual bath dating back 2,000 years. While this is already significant, it was found not far from an area called Gethsemane, believed to have been the site of the Last Supper. The Church of the Agony was allegedly built on the very spot where Judas betrayed Jesus by giving him a kiss and then handing him over to the Roman soldiers. The church is decorated in very fine carvings and Greek inscriptions alluding to the sacrifice of Jesus. The Jewish bath was found during a construction project, and while there are many to be found, it is the only one in this area. It was likely used for the nearby oil and wine production workers to purify themselves 2,000 years ago, just how it was mentioned in the Gospels. According to archaeologist Ken Dark, who recently uncovered what he believes to be the childhood home of Jesus Christ in Nazareth, the existence of the bath in this place is significant. It could hold clues to the exact location where the Last Supper was held, but the physical site of the Last Supper has yet to be unearthed. Ancient tattoo instrument. An ancient tattooing tool has recently been discovered in North America, and as far as we know, it could be the oldest tattooing artifact ever found on the continent. What's really crazy is that the tool was just recently found sitting in an old box inside of museum storage. An anthropology PhD candidate at Washington State University stumbled upon the instrument completely by accident while he was taking inventory of the different artifacts at the university. According to Washington State, his find has great significance as it could help researchers to understand what role tattoos played in the indigenous cultures of North America. We know almost nothing about the tattooing practices of prehistoric people throughout Native American cultures. What archaeologists do know is that tattooing was more prevalent thousands of years ago than it is today, especially for religious groups and wealthier individuals who covered themselves in tattoos to show off their abundance. However, the big issue here is that ink is not generally preserved even in mummified bodies. For example, the oldest figurative tattoos were recently discovered on Egyptian mummies that were 5,000 years old, according to the Journal of Archaeological Science. But this is very rare. As of today, not a single tattoo has been found on any preserved human body throughout the United States. And that's what makes the discovery of the tattooing artifact so amazing. Mistaken biblical identity. A shocking new study reveals that bones previously thought to belong to St. James the Younger, one of the 12 apostles and possibly Jesus' brother, are a case of mistaken identity. Recent radiocarbon dating results show that the femur fragments, which have resided at the Santi Apostoli Church in Rome for the past 1,500 years, belong to someone else. St. James the Younger lived during the 1st century BC, according to the study which was published in the journal Heritage Science, and the bones date back to sometime between 214 and 230 AD. Our dates, although disproving it was St. James, fall in a dark period, between the time when the apostles died and Christianity became the dominant religion in the Roman Empire, lead study author Carl Lund Rasmussen told Life Science. So, whose bones are they? The bones thought to belong to St. James were transported to the Church of Santi Apostoli during the 6th century, but nobody knows where they came from. They were moved along with tibia fragments and a mummified foot, thought to belong to fellow apostle St. Philip. The team decided against attempting to determine the age of the remains believed to be St. Philip's, citing difficulties relating to decontaminating the bones. Although the alleged remains of St. James turned out to be someone else's bones, researchers believe that they do belong to an early Christian. Cookie Monster Rock. If you like rocks and gemstones like me, you're going to love this. A rock collector in Brazil has found an agate geode that when it was cut open looks just like Cookie Monster. The resemblance to the popular Sesame Street character Cookie Monster is uncanny, and pictures are going viral after Mike Bowers, a gem collector from California, posted footage of the unusual object on social media. It looks like it was made on purpose. No way this was made by nature. The video plays Cookie Monster's signature song, C is for Cookie, while revealing the interior of both pieces of the cut-open rock, which looks shockingly like the character's face. Cookie Monster's official Twitter account caught wind of the look-alike rock and tweeted in response, "Me no geologist, but me think that rock look a lot like me." Bowers bought the object from Brazil-based gemologist Lucas Vasari after it was found in Soledade, a gem hotspot in the southern part of the country. He reportedly received offers for as much as $10,000 for the rock, but plans to keep it in his cookie jar, he joked, at least for now. He is thinking that it will most likely end up in a museum or a high-end collection. It is extremely rare to find face shapes and agates, but with this example, it's just clear-cut, no doubt of what you're looking at. Another unique feature is that the face appears on both sides of the cut stone. Bauer says that it's not so common for the voids to be so symmetrical as to create a mirror image. The gem collector is surprised at how popular his post became. In a Live Science interview, he said, "I didn't realize that Cookie Monster was so well known and part of the world cultural heritage. Where has he been? Of course it's popular. And now everybody wants it." And now for number 7, but first want to give a big shout out to Angel Hamar and Jasmine Moore for supporting this channel. Thanks for joining us in our corner of the internet, and be sure to hit that subscribe button to join the Origins Explained family. More terracotta warriors. The terracotta army just got a little larger. A few hundred new funerary sculptures have just been found inside the tomb of the first Chinese emperor, Qin Shi Huang. There are already 8,000 terracotta warriors that have been unearthed in the capital of the Shaanxi province, considered to be one of the largest funerary projects ever undertaken by an ancient society and one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time. Now, there are even more. The terracotta warriors were created about 2,200 years ago to protect the emperor when he traveled into the afterlife. This is one of those discoveries that came by complete accident. The terracotta warriors were stumbled upon by a couple of local farmers trying to dig a well in a field back in 1974. Since then, a massive museum facility has been built around these legendary sculptures, with the largest pit being about the size of an airplane hangar. Researchers say it took around 700,000 laborers between 30 and 40 years to complete the terracotta warriors and the tombs that hold them. And yet there appear to be more and more secrets still hidden beneath the dirt. This newest discovery was just announced by local Chinese media. The archaeologists uncovered about 200 more warriors, 12 more clay horses, and 2 additional chariots. They also found a huge collection of bronze weapons. Shen Maosheng, the lead archaeologist on the dig, says that these new discoveries are giving researchers a better idea of how the ancient Chinese military went about its business. For example, the newest warriors were found holding either poles or bows for weapons, showing that the soldiers on the battlefield each had their own role and responsibility. The Lion Man. The Lion Man is considered to be a masterpiece from the Ice Age. Dating back to around 40,000 years old, it is a figurine carved from mammoth ivory with the head of a cave lion and the body of a human. The Lion Man is considered a sculpted masterpiece of great originality, huge technical skill, and unbelievable imagination, as reported by the British Museum. It's only a few inches tall, and judging by the incredible artistic detail, this cat-human hybrid was meant to be a powerful and mysterious figure, and from a world beyond anything found in nature. He's watching and listening. The British Museum says that this is the first known representation of a being that does not exist in the physical world, and it could be the first real leap that our ancestors made from the world of the living to the world of the supernatural. In 2013, there was a special exhibit at the Museum Ulm where the lion was deconstructed into 800 pieces and then reassembled, and a sculptor created a replica using only the tools that would have been available. It took him over 370 hours and countless blisters, but he was able to replicate it in a mini-documentary called The Lion Man: The Experiment. The Lion Man was first discovered in a cave in the south of Germany back in 1939, and scientists know by the erosion on its body that it was probably passed around from person to person as part of a ritual. But of course, we don't know what the story was about, or whether it was a deity, a human on some type of quest, or perhaps part of a creation story. Unfortunately, we will probably never know the stories that were told around the fire about the Lion Man 40,000 years ago, but it is incredible that he has even survived at all. Pork clock of Pompei. While excavating a Roman villa buried in ash in Pompei, workers from the 18th century found a small lump of metal shaped like a cured ham hock. It turned out to be one of the world's oldest sundials that could be carried around, and it is now known as the pork clock. This whimsical piece of history was the pocket watch of its day. The object is just one of 25 other small sundials found in antiquity, making it extremely rare. Wesleyan University's Christopher Parslow, a professor of classical studies and Roman archaeology, decided to make a 3D reconstruction with a printer to be able to study it better. Made in just a few hours, it is much easier to look at without having to worry about damaging the original. On one side, it has a distorted grid used as the dial, and like the original, it has vertical lines that represent the months and horizontal lines that indicate the number of hours past sunrise or before sunset. The original clock was missing the part of the dial that casts a shadow, but the one that was lost was said to be in the shape of a pig's tail. To use this sundial to tell time, you would line up the tip of the pig's tail with the line that represents the given month. Then, counting the number of horizontal lines from the top of the dial to where the shadow falls, you could tell the hour. This pork clock was probably a status symbol more than anything. Back in the day, there were fixed sundials everywhere, but having one that you could carry around was unusual. But why is it in the shape of a prosciutto? Parslow isn't sure, but he notes that the pig is a symbol that represented living for the day. Kenneth LePatin, curator of antiquities at the J. Paul Getty Museum, said that they had a good sense of humor back then, and the pork clock is a joke, meaning enjoy your life while you've got it because you're going to end up like a ham. Fish lung. Researchers in Morocco recently examined the fossilized lung of a previously unknown ancient fish species belonging to the mysterious coelacanth order, which was thought to be extinct until someone discovered a live specimen in 1938. The species in question, which is extinct, measured an estimated 17 feet long, almost the size of a great white shark. The evidence dates back roughly 66 million years to the end of the Cretaceous period, when 75% of life on Earth, including the dinosaurs, was wiped out by an asteroid. SETI co-author David Martell said that the discovery was made in a place where coelacanths were never found before. Here's where it gets a little confusing. The fossilized lung's owner, a pterosaur collector, originally mistook the specimen as a pterodactyl skull. Upon re-examination, he realized that he might be wrong, and so he contacted Martell for an expert opinion. Martell couldn't tell based on pictures alone what the fossil represented, but once he saw it in person, he suspected that it was a coelacanth lung. Brazilian paleontologist Paulo Brito, a world-leading coelacanth expert, confirmed Martell's suspicions and was reportedly astonished by the size of the specimen. It was bigger than all other known ancient coelacanths, which measured 10 and 13 feet long. Modern coelacanths are much smaller, reaching just 6 feet long. Researchers are unsure where the rest of the fossilized specimen's body ended up, but they believe it may have been eaten, and damage to the lung also indicates that this is a distinct possibility. But as Martell pointed out, there is no way of knowing for sure how the animal died. Prehistoric sea lizard. Scientists have identified a strange new mosasaur species that went extinct 66 million years ago. The small seagoing lizard, dubbed Xenodens kaliminkari, lived in modern-day Morocco starting around 72 million years ago. It was roughly the size of a porpoise and had serrated knife-like teeth that enabled the reptile to pursue a vast range of prey, cutting entire fish in half and biting large chunks out of bigger animals. This tiny terror of the day had chompers unlike the teeth of other reptiles and reminded lead study author Dr. Nick Longrich of the sleeper shark teeth he had observed during past fishing trips to Alaska. It's like a dolphin with shark teeth. Yikes. 66 million years ago, the coasts of Africa were the most dangerous seas in the world, Longrich said. He added predator diversity there was unlike anything seen anywhere else on the planet. Longrich explained that the newly discovered species adds to a growing list of marine reptiles that lived in the area during the late Cretaceous period, indicating that their diversity peaked shortly before the extinction event that killed them. This means that their ecosystem was thriving when the asteroid hit. Just can't catch a break. The Egyptian staircase. In 2008, news spread that there was actually a fourth pyramid of Giza that had been lost to history. About 5 miles from the Great Pyramid, it would have been smaller than the others, but it was most likely dismantled in the 1700s and used for construction projects. However, around the area, researchers have stumbled upon a mysterious staircase hidden in the desert. There appears to be almost no information about this strange discovery online other than a few photos uploaded by a researcher who discovered it, allegedly near an old military base. This could be the reason why the staircase hasn't been investigated, because the military is keeping the area off limits. Or it could be for reasons even more curious. As far as anyone can tell, the staircase isn't connected to any other archaeological site and appears to have been carved in the middle of the desert for reasons unknown. It's almost impossible to see unless you're on top of it, at which point you can gaze into an 80-foot deep hole cut through the limestone ground. Nobody knows what's at the bottom of the staircase, when it was created, or why it's being completely ignored by scientists and archaeologists. Locals call it a Roman well, but what this site actually is remains a mystery. If you know anything about it, please let me know in the comments below. Bronze Age graves. Stonehenge is still revealing secrets even after all this time. Now, Bronze Age graves have just been uncovered at the site of Stonehenge, and they are shedding some new light on the ancient architects of this amazing monument. Archaeologists were doing some digging before the controversial A303 tunnel gets built near Stonehenge. The entire area has been suffering due to heavy traffic and congestion, and so there is a new tunnel project underway to divert traffic from the ancient monument. However, archaeologists are worried that the construction might destroy other possible evidence. Now they are in a rush, but while the project may be a bit controversial, it has revealed some new, fascinating archaeological discoveries. A collection of ancient graves near the Stonehenge Visitor Center contain Neolithic pottery, the remnants of an unknown C-shaped enclosure, and the remains of a baby's ear bones inside of a plain pottery beaker. They also found a grave with the remains of a man inside believed to be 4,000 years old. But what's really fascinating about this is that it's just the tip of the iceberg. As the construction continues to move forward, the archaeologists will be on site to make sure that not a single new discovery is missed. Crocodile Stone. One of the most spectacular temples in the country of Laos is the Wat Phu Temple Complex. The impressive temple is associated in the minds of locals with the Hindu god Shiva, and there is a strange rock located there that some believe has a gruesome past. It's known as the Crocodile Stone for its uncanny resemblance to the animal, but some believe the imprint doesn't actually look like a crocodile, but is shaped to resemble the human body, giving rise to the belief that the stone was used for human sacrifices. There are other animal carvings at the temple, but this strange stone is the one that seems to garner the most attention. A local legend claims that once a year, the king of Chenla, what is now Cambodia, would sit on the main causeway at the temple complex where he would pray to the spirits of the mountains for their blessings. In return, he would make sacrifices to these gods for their protection, usually choosing 2 girls who were plied with rice wine before they were sacrificed. So, when the crocodile stone was discovered, people connected the item with the legend, and there may actually be some truth to the tale. Chinese texts written in the 6th century AD talk of sacrifices that took place there. Although they mention the top of Phu Khao Mountain as the site, rather than the crocodile stone specifically, local legend lives on to this day that the stone was used for these grisly rites. And now for number 6. But first, it's shoutout time! Ask and ye shall receive! Big thank you to Rohan Das and Poki Novakovic for subscribing and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us! Ancient cesspit. While conducting preliminary excavations in anticipation of building a new sewer beneath the Courtauld Gallery in London last year, construction workers discovered a giant medieval cesspit at the site. The 15-foot deep pit was filled with a trove of around 100 medieval artifacts dating back to the 14th and 15th centuries, including ceramic vessels, a ring, pendant, belt buckle, forks, and other utensils. The most bizarre artifact found in the pit is a rare medieval tile bearing a depiction of a strange mythical creature with a human head at one end and a leaf-like tail at the other. During different times throughout history, the pit had different uses. It was remodeled into a cellar during the 17th century, and a latrine was added at some point thereafter. Archaeologists from the Museum of London Archaeology are conducting the excavation, which has revealed a lot of new information about the site's past, especially since there are few known existing records from the late medieval era, which include an inaccurate drawing from 1543. These new discoveries are helping experts better understand medieval London settlements and the buildings that were constructed afterward. Simon Thurley, the former chief executive of the English Heritage Charity, said of the discovery, "It's unusual to get excited about a cesspit. It's an incredibly significant find." Giant jar tombs. In the city of Isfahan in central Iran, archaeologist Ali Reza Jafari Zand is leading a team in excavating a burial mound at a site called Tepe Ashraf, where they have found 2 unusual giant jar tombs. The discovery of the second one was based on a guess. These jar tombs offer valuable clues to uncover the history of pre-Islamic Isfahan. The jar tombs are what they sound like, giant vessels with someone buried inside, dating back around 2,000 years ago. The dig is ongoing, and Jafari Zand suspects that the hill may contain a Parthian-era cemetery dating back to sometime between 247 BC and 224 AD, when the Parthians ruled the region. The team found several other pre-Islamic artifacts at the site, including a stone well in the shape of a square from the Sassanid Empire that ruled the area following the Parthian collapse. Other dynasties that came after also used the structures in the area, leaving behind many archaeological artifacts. Isfahan has been continuously inhabited for thousands of years and once served as an important center of international trade and diplomacy. The modern city was built right on top, and the excavations of these hills and mounds will help to reveal more fascinating finds like tombs in jars. History's first businesswoman. New archaeological evidence has just revealed the very first well-documented businesswoman in history, dating back around 1870 BC in the city of Assur, located in modern-day Iraq. The BBC reports that in this city there was a woman named Ahaha. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation or not, but that's how it's spelled. I promise I didn't make it up. Ahaha had established a trade route to another city in modern-day Turkey with the help of a few investors, creating a donkey caravan that delivered tin and textiles. However, it seems that her own brothers embezzled money from her and she went broke. Ahaha wrote a letter on a clay tablet to a different brother pleading for his help, claiming that she had been robbed of her money and that she needed help to save herself from financial disaster. "I have nothing else apart from these funds," she wrote in cuneiform script. "Take care to act so that I will not be ruined." She instructed her brother to recover her silver and update her quickly. "Now is the time to do me a favor and to save me from financial stress." The letter written by Ahaha to her brother was one of 23,000 clay tablets recently excavated from the ruins of different merchant homes in Kanesh, Turkey. These clay tablets all belong to Assyrian expats who had settled in the city after fleeing their homes in Assur to earn a better life. Many of these expats were females, attracted to Kanesh because of new opportunities being created by social change. Kanesh was home to some of the very first female bankers, investors, and businesswomen. According to the report from the BBC, almost all the letters found by archaeologists date from between 1900 and 1850 BC, when the Assyrian trading network was booming. Some of these women had caravans of up to 300 donkeys roaming across the mountains, delivering luxury goods, clay letters, and other raw materials. Basically, women ruled the trade network from Central Asia all the way to Afghanistan and Pakistan, and even beyond. An ancient figure. Archaeologists exploring the ruins of the ancient city of Myra have found 50 unique terracotta figurines that depict humans, gods, and even animals. The discovery of the figurines was made by researchers working for Athens University at an ancient Roman theater. Researchers believe that the figurines date as far back as the Hellenistic period, right around the time that Alexander the Great died in 323 BC. The leader of the dig said that the figurines were a big, unexpected surprise, and that it was almost as if the ancient people of Myra were suddenly resurrected through the miniature artistic statuettes. The figurines are only a few inches tall, and some of the more interesting figures include Artemis, Apollo, and even Hercules. Some of them were so well preserved that they still had remnants of coloring, from red to blue to pink. This shows the archaeologists what kind of colors these ancient people were wearing. It also reveals the exact type of clothing that was popular back then, which is definitely a bit different from what you see in the movies. Besides the terracotta figurines, researchers found ceramic, bronze, lead, and silver artifacts around the theater. Myra was once one of the most important towns in ancient Turkey, when the area was known as Lycia. Thousands of years ago, the Roman amphitheater in which these figurines were found would have been one of the most impressive buildings throughout the region, and remains so to this day. Orca geoglyph in Peru. Archaeologists have rediscovered a giant geoglyph discovered in the remote Palpa region of southern Peru. It was lost for over 50 years until Johnny Isla, an archaeologist and the head of Peru's Ministry of Culture in the Ica province, recalled seeing the image in an archaeological catalog of geoglyphs. This was a few years earlier, but he made it his mission to find it. Setting out on foot with a little help from Google Earth, Isla searched far and wide, and even though the location and description in the original catalog were wrong, Isla found what he was looking for. It was a giant geoglyph of an orca. After restoring and analyzing the image, Isla and his team reported the glyph of the orca was 200 feet long and had symbols that indicate it could have had religious significance to whomever carved it. The large marine animal is considered a powerful semi-mythical creature, according to Peruvian lore. Geoglyphs are famous around the world, but the orca is special. Some parts of the image were created by stacking stones on top of one another, so when viewed from above, it really stands out from the hillside where it was found. This move points researchers to the glyph's origin possibly coming from the older Paracas culture instead of the Nazca culture, whose similar glyphs in a neighboring province are the subject of years of study. The fact that it is carved on a hillside facing the valley below is another piece of evidence that the Paracas culture created the glyph, indicating that the area was sacred to them. Lehi horse. In 2018, landscapers unearthed a horse skeleton in an ancient lake in Lehi, Utah, in somebody's backyard. Experts originally believed the specimen was a 16,000-year-old mare who roamed the area during the last ice age, but a new study recently found that it was a domestic horse, and that the skeleton is no more than 340 years old. Prehistoric wild horses existed in North America starting millions of years ago and went extinct around 10,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age, most likely due to a combination of climate change and human activity. The wild horse populations that exist on the continent today formed after Europeans brought the animals over, and some of them escaped. The Lehi horse died when she was around 12 years old. Native Americans living in the area at the time, perhaps a member of the Ute or Shoshone communities, raised and rode her, lead study author William Taylor told Life Science. He further explained that new radiocarbon dating results put her death at some time after 1680, before Europeans settled in what is now the Salt Lake region. Fractures in the horse's back and severe arthritis point toward the likelihood that she was ridden, as these types of injuries are reportedly rare in wild animals, serving as additional evidence that she lived more recently than the last ice age. An isotope analysis of her teeth showed that she ate local vegetation, indicating that people cared for her. Sexy fresco. It's not necessarily surprising that ancient people enjoyed erotic imagery, but some of these discoveries are kind of strange. During excavations at the ancient Roman city of Pompei in 2018, archaeologists uncovered a well-preserved fresco depicting a love scene between Leda, the legendary Spartan queen, and a swan. The bird represents the Greek god Zeus, known as Jupiter to the Romans, and the picture is from a story about him impregnating Leda while in disguise. You know those gods were sneaky. The fresco was found inside an upscale townhouse along a road called the Via del Vesuvio. Researchers believe the dwelling belonged to a wealthy merchant who, like some others at the time, enjoyed displaying mythical images as a sign of affluence. According to legend, Zeus assumed swan form and fled into Leda's arms to escape a predatory eagle. He seduced the married woman, who also slept with her husband, the Spartan king Tyndareus, the same night. As a result, 4 children were hatched from 2 eggs. 2 were from Zeus, a boy named Pollux, and the famous Helen of Troy. The other 2 children, fathered by Tyndareus, were named Castor and Clytemnestra. This rendition of Leda and the swan is unique among the examples of the fairly popular image that have been discovered throughout ancient Rome. In most versions, Leda is standing, but in the newly discovered one, she is seated. The depiction also shows her and the swan in the actual act, which is uncommon, and Leda is painted to make direct eye contact with someone entering the room. This is just one of many fascinating artifacts and structures that continue to be discovered as archaeologists excavate the city, offering a first-hand look at what life there was like before volcanic ash buried Pompeii in 79 AD. The new Dino mummy. A new discovery in the world of paleontology is shaking up what scientists know about dinosaurs. Scientists are hailing this newest specimen of Nodosaur as the best preserved dinosaur ever unearthed in human history. This is because its bones are still covered by skin and armor, even though the dinosaur died millions of years ago. This impeccable fossil was recently revealed by the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology in Canada, and paleontologists from around the world are calling it more of a mummy than a fossil. It even has its guts still inside its body. And according to researcher Caleb Brown, the Nodosaur looks exactly as it would have 110 million years ago. But what kind of dinosaur is this? It was enormous, about 3,000 pounds, walking on 4 legs with a protective shell of plated armor. The preserved remains of this Nodosaur are so perfect that researchers were able to immediately determine the color of the dinosaur's skin. Apparently, it was reddish-brown, which scientists believe was one of the earliest methods of camouflage, keeping the giant herbivore safe from potential predators in the dense underbrush. Even more incredible is that the dinosaur mummy was found in 3 dimensions. This means that it retained its original shape the entire time it was dead, unlike most dinosaurs that are only found as thin fossils petrified in the rock. Beast carving. DNA evidence has revealed some extraordinarily strange truths about a rather odd bovine creature that was painted on a European cave wall during the last ice age. Here's how it happened. Cave paintings all over Europe depict two different kinds of bison. There is one with long horns and a big hump, and there is another with shorter horns and a smaller hump. These smaller bison were painted about 22,000 years ago. However, the larger bison appeared 17,000 years ago. And here's where things get interesting. Until just recently, scientists were positive that the two different bison were actually the same steppe bison but drawn differently because of a change in the artistic styles of the time. But it turns out that they were completely different animals. By using DNA sequencing of teeth and bones taken from 64 different bison, scientists have figured out that about 120,000 years ago, breeding between the ordinary steppe bison and the extinct auroch created an ancestor of modern-day cattle that is currently also extinct. But basically, it was a new type of bison previously unknown to science. This explains the two different animals in the cave paintings. And even more than that, like why archaeologists have discovered bison bones from the Ice Age that don't match any already known size or morphology from either the bison or the aurochs. Scientists from the University of Adelaide used this new information and analyzed bison DNA and proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that European bison descended from this mysterious hybrid animal. But nobody is entirely sure what happened to it, with most scientists agreeing it just kind of went away. Shipwreck relics. 200 years after sinking below the waves, an ancient shipwreck washed ashore, surprising beachgoers in Florida in 2018. Believed to date between the 1700s and 1800s, the ship is a holy grail of shipwrecks. Not only is it remarkably well preserved, but it holds a time-worn secret in its waterlogged planks. When researchers at the St. Augustine Lighthouse Archaeological Maritime Program began inspecting the ship more closely, they found Roman numerals carved into the ribs of the 48-foot section of the ship's hull. It also had wooden pegs holding it together like nails. Since ships can drift hundreds of miles after they sink, researchers still need to uncover the final destination of the ship and whether it actually sank off the Florida coast, or if it was merely swept there by the tides after centuries on the ocean floor. Originally sheathed in copper, there were still a number of copper tack heads visible on the wreckage. Unfortunately, after being preserved in sand for so long, a storm is believed to have dislodged the ship, putting it at risk from the tide. As researchers set out to preserve what they could, they were able to take a number of photos so they could later create a 3D model of the hull before the historic ship of unknown origins could be studied before it was once again lost to the ocean. Ancient shell horn. For decades, a large conch shell that researchers now believe may be the oldest known seashell instrument sat unnoticed at a museum. Discovered in a prehistoric cave dwelling in the Marcellus Cave of the French Pyrenees in 1931, the artifact was originally thought to be a drinking vessel. But a recent fresh look at the 12-inch long conch shell revealed that it is no beverage cup, but a wind instrument, and it still plays, despite being roughly 18,000 years old. The team invited a French horn player to try it out, despite archaeologist Carol Fritz's fear that it might break. Thankfully, it didn't, and ABC reported that it played C, C-sharp, and D notes. The researchers, whose findings were published earlier this year in the journal Science Advances, examined the instrument after someone found it during an inventory at the Natural History Museum of Toulouse and noticed that it had several unusual holes in it and that its tip was broken off. Close inspection revealed that the shell had been deliberately altered. This discovery reminds us that their lives were much richer and more complex than just stone tools and big game, archaeologist Margaret Conkey, who was not involved in the research, told ABC. Because Marcellus Cave is far from the ocean, the team concluded that the conch shell made its way there through a trade network, or it was brought there by nomadic prehistoric people. They created a 3D replica of the instrument, which they are using to learn more about the full range of notes it could once play. Asia's oldest forest. A 2019 study published in the journal Current Biology revealed the discovery of strange fossilized tree trunks making up the oldest forest ever found in Asia. Paleobotanists Deming Wang and Min Chin found the spindly fossils in 2016 near the town of Qinhang in China's Anhui province, while examining the walls of the Jianchuan clay mine. They named the 365-million-year-old palm tree-like trees Guangdendron, occupying an area measuring at least 62 acres, around the same size as 47 American football fields. The trees grew in an area that at the time was prone to coastal flooding. These non-flowering plants grew straight upward, had leafy crowns and trunks with no branches, and shed megaspores instead of seeds. On average, they reached 10.5 feet tall, although the tallest fossilized specimen discovered was an estimated 25.3 feet tall. The density and small size of the trees would make the Qinghang forest very similar to a sugarcane field. Scientists don't know much about the environment the trees lived in, but hope to learn more through further research and exploration. Anglo-Saxon cemetery. Archaeologists in England just found an outstanding Anglo-Saxon cemetery, complete with treasures. This happened very close to the village of Overstone, and it's one of the largest discoveries of its kind. At least 154 Anglo-Saxon burials were studied over an operation that lasted 12 months. Along with the thousands of human remains discovered, there were about 3,000 burial artifacts, including beads, brushes, rings, and other kinds of decorative jewelry. Researchers even found cosmetic kits and combs made out of bones. Whoever was buried in this massive cemetery obviously wanted to look their best in the afterlife. Of course, there were also some artifacts that suggested these people were violent in life. The archaeologists dug up at least 25 spears and 40 blades. They also found a settlement close by, seen for the first time in centuries. The structures discovered at the ancient settlement date back to the Bronze Age, and according to project manager Simon Marcus, it is extremely rare to find both an Anglo-Saxon cemetery and an Anglo-Saxon settlement in the same archaeological dig. Between these two places, there are about 4,000 years or more of precious history that will take another 12 months for scientists to properly wrap their heads around. There are tens of thousands of artifacts to study, dozens of ruined structures to investigate, and countless more human remains still waiting to be unearthed. The Newton Stone. The Newton Stone is a very strange monolith inscribed with a message that nobody has ever been able to solve. It was first discovered in 1804 when the Earl of Aberdeen was laying a road near an old farmhouse. It is carved with a message in a language that nobody has been able to solve. To make matters even more mysterious, the writing has been interpreted as using no less than 5 different ancient alphabets. It's a total enigma, and it was eventually uprooted from where it was discovered in the middle of nowhere and placed in the garden of Newton House by the late Scottish antiquarian Alexander Gordon. The stone stands about 9 feet tall, is decorated in strange horizontal lines and geometric shapes, and at the top is a script that almost looks Roman, but which definitely is not. There is also an inscription in an early medieval alphabet known as Ogham, which was used between the 1st and 9th centuries as part of one of the earliest Irish languages. The Newton Stone has 6 lines, 48 characters and symbols, and there's even a swastika in there for good measure. Currently, the message is still undeciphered. Is this unknown script a modern hoax, or remnants of a lost people? While skeptics agree it is an old rock, beyond that, the rest is up for debate. Bla Jungfrun Island. When you think of witchcraft, you might think of Salem, but a recent archaeological discovery on an island known as Bla Jungfrun in Sweden leaves researchers a little confused. The small island, measuring less than a mile long, is now a national park located in the Baltic Sea. Its environment seems quite inhospitable, with dense forests and large rocks, filled with mysterious caves and an ancient stone labyrinth. Archaeologists investigating the caves on Bla Jungfrun believe that strange rituals and performances dating back thousands of years might have taken place inside. The locals associate the island with dark curses and evil magic. The island of Bla Jungfrun, which is often translated as Blue Maiden, has a history of bad luck and a reputation for witchcraft. And even now, tourists who come to the island must not stray off the paths or stay after nightfall. Local legends documented in the 16th century reported that witches gather on the island on the day before Good Friday to worship the devil. Some say its blue granite is what gives it such an ominous appearance. Sailors feared going past, and those who believe in its dark aura leave clothing on the shores to appease the female supernatural beings said to haunt the place. While the legends and scary stories might vary, there may be a grain of truth, something that was passed down over generations that inspired fear. Archaeologists investigated the island for over a year and found 2 caves with parts hammered out by Stone Age people. This hollowed-out area, or the process of making it, may have had ritualistic significance. Inside, they also found a fireplace and some tools. There may also be an altar to leave offerings, and there is a rock shelter in between 2 caves with more tools and ancient seal bones left behind. The mysterious ritualistic practices, along with the labyrinth, the caves, and the evil spirits who live there, make it a dark and evil place in Swedish folklore. But researchers believe there is much more to the island that they still haven't found, but it is not easily giving up its secrets. A personal engraving. While excavating in anticipation of a road construction project in Cambridgeshire, England last year, a team of archaeologists discovered an ancient millstone bearing an engraving of a large phallus. The artifact dates back roughly 2,000 years during the Roman era in Britain. While this may not exactly be most people's idea of art in modern times, it meant something to the people who lived in the area 2 millennia ago. The phallus was seen as an important image of strength and virility in the Roman world, lead archaeologist Steve Sherlock told Cambridgeshire Live, adding that Roman fighters often wore penis-engraved good luck charms before marching onto the battlefield. The rare artifact is one of just 4 decorated Roman millstones that have been discovered throughout Britain, and the latest in a series of baffling discoveries archaeologists have made during the road construction project. Other artifacts that have been found include woolly mammoth tusks, woolly rhino skulls, and evidence that people brewed beer in Britain as early as 400 BC. The objects, which date back to the Neolithic, Bronze and Iron Ages, and Roman, Anglo-Saxon, and medieval periods, also include the second gold coin ever found in Britain that depicts the Roman Emperor Laelianus, who reigned for just 2 months in 269 AD. Urbano Monte map. In 1587, an Italian mapmaker named Urbano Monte created a map on 60 sheets of paper and bound them together as an atlas. Little is known about the man from Milan, who came from a wealthy family and lived during a time of heightened interest in geography, stemming from the increasing exploration of the world. In creating his atlas, Monte gleaned information from those created by cartographers like Gerardus Mercator and Abraham Ortelius, according to National Geographic, and incorporated recently discovered territories like Tierra del Fuego, located at the southern tip of South America. Additionally, Monte's depiction of Japan is more detailed than others from the time, because when the first official Japanese delegation traveled to Milan in 1585, they met with him and were able to tell him firsthand. The map's empty spaces contain drawings of animals, ships, royalty, including King Philip II of Spain seated upon a throne, and even mermen and unicorns. Monte's use of projection, in other words, to portray the globe on a flat surface, is unusual for maps of the time. Known as polar azimuthal projection, it shows the North Pole in the map's center, with longitudinal lines radiating outward, a technique that did not become popular until the 20th century. Map collector David Rumsey, who purchased Monte's map and donated it to the David Rumsey Map Center at Stanford University, told National Geographic that he believes the 16th century cartographer was trying to demonstrate the Earth's round shape. In late 2017, Rumsey's nephew Brandon pieced each page of the atlas together to form one large map, measuring over 9 feet by 9 feet. It was the first time in 430 years since the map was created that anyone had seen it as a complete picture. Ancient humanoids. In a recent and very rare discovery, multidimensional art has been found inside of a cave shelter in Tanzania. However, the reason this discovery is so strange is that the scenes appear to depict bizarre humanoid beings. Even more, the rituals depicted in the cave drawings don't line up with what scientists currently know about the traditions of the ancient Sandawe people, who have lived in Tanzania for thousands of years. The Sandawe people are descendants of the Gogo, and they are believed to have the oldest DNA known to science, dating back about 87,000 years. They are still living in Tanzania today, and they still hold on to many of their ancient ritual practices. And this is what makes the cave paintings so strange. They seem to depict life forms that are not entirely human, some with large alien heads, and some even with the horns of demons. Plus, some of these humanoid creatures appear to be eating normal human figures. Others are eating buffaloes, giraffes, and even cattle. But the artwork is unlike anything else found in the region. It was first discovered by researchers from Poland, who claim that the artworks are several hundreds of years old, but are unable to put a proper date on them. The taming of fire. Do you know when we started using fire? This was long up for debate, but now, according to new archaeological evidence, humans mastered fire about 350,000 years ago. This is based on some burnt flints recently discovered in Tabun Cave in the north of Israel, leading experts to speculate that these were some of the first tools ever used by early humans to make fire. But this discovery doesn't come without its controversy. These flints discovered on the cliffs of Israel's Mount Carmel may indeed be the oldest physical evidence of humans manipulating fire, but the archaeological site itself has evidence that humans inhabited the area for 150,000 years prior. Archaeologists figured this out by looking at flints from 100 different layers of sediment. Everything older than 350,000 years showed no evidence of burning, meaning the flints could not have possibly been used to start fires. But suddenly, 350,000 years ago, there was a huge surge in the number of flints that had been exposed to flame. This suggests that the humans living here had a sudden eureka moment. The issue here is that scientists don't know what suddenly gave humans the ability to control fire. However, scientists generally agree that when humans figured it out, it changed our history forever. We began to spread into the colder climates of the world and started cooking our food. Dr. Ron Scheimelmitz from the University of Haifa says that understanding the time frame surrounding our discovery of fire can help experts to understand our evolution over the course of our entire existence. Screws in rocks. In the 1990s, Russian scientists were investigating the Kaluga region after an asteroid strike occurred. What they found was quite unexpected. It appeared to be a screw fixed inside a rock that dates back 300 million years. So the question is, how did a screw get inside the rock? Many claim that it was proof of a highly advanced lost civilization, or even the work of aliens. The screw measures 1 inch and is said to have iron atoms that fused with the silicone atoms of the rock. After X-raying the rock, it seems like there is also another screw inside. However, the group responsible for the rock is the Kosmopoisk Group, aka Space Search, and the Russian Scientific Organization, which conducts expeditions to sites that are believed to have extraterrestrial activity or unusual creatures. They have a very mixed reputation. Another famous rock with a screw in it is the Lanzhou screw, which is believed to be similar to the one found in Russia. The pear-shaped stone is quite dark, and when it was cut open, it looked like there was a metal screw that was stuck inside. Again, rumors spread that it must be the remains of a mysterious civilization or something from another planet. But is it actually a screw or the remnants of an ancient sea creature? Some scientists who examined the photos of the screw believe it could actually be the fossilized remains of crinoids. They're a species of marine animal that was around 350 million years ago, which is pretty much the age of the rock. Scientists have also found many fossils of crinoids over the years and suggest the screw-like shape is actually the stalk, which also has that threaded shape embedded in the rock. To the untrained eye, it could look very much like a screw. What do you think? Was it some ancient alien race that misplaced a screw? Or the fossilized remains of an ancient sea lily? Let me know in the comments below. Maliwawa figures. Western Arnhem Land, located in Australia's Northern Territory, is extremely archaeologically rich, containing several thousand rock art sites. New discoveries are made there every year. Last year, researchers described a previously unknown rock art style in the journal Australian Archaeology. Primarily found throughout the northwestern part of the region, the style, called the Maliwawa figures, is defined by large naturalistic human and animal figures shaded with stroked lines. The team found 572 Maliwawa paintings throughout 87 rock shelters over a distance spanning roughly 80 miles. Writing for The Conversation, the researchers described the figures as typically measuring at least 20 inches high. Some are life-sized, while others are small, measuring just 8 to 20 inches high. They are red to mulberry colored and likely date back between 6,000 and 9,400 years. Most of the images depict humans interacting with animals, with an emphasis on kangaroos and wallabies. These human-animal relationships seem to be the central focus of the paintings, which appear to show animals participating in human activities in some cases, according to the study's authors, who explain that scenes like these in rock art are rare worldwide. The Maliwawa figures provide an unprecedented look at how Aborigines lived and their culture and beliefs. Some of the paintings feature extinct animals, including thylacines. Many of the humans in the images are male and can be identified as such based on their genitalia, while the gender of others are unidentifiable and a small number are women. These fascinating discoveries highlight the importance of preserving Australia's often overlooked indigenous artifacts. Wolf-sized otter. 6 million years ago in the swampy habitat of what is now southwestern China lived a 100-pound otter with powerful jaws that made it much stronger than today's otters, who knock sea urchins against stones to break them open. Named Cyamogale melilutra, it was able to bite right into mollusks like wooden potato chips. Scientists first identified and described the prehistoric species in 2017, after fossilized evidence was discovered in China's Yunnan province. A study of the creature determined that the gigantic otter was a late Miocene apex predator whose teeth and jaws were capable of crushing a wide variety of prey. We still think it probably consumed mollusks, but at a level of capability that's way beyond what we see in living otters, study leader Zi Jiaqzhang told National Geographic. Today, there are two types of otters, including molluscivores, which feast on mollusks, and piscivores, who eat fish. The researchers who reported their findings in the journal Scientific Reports initially assumed that the molluscivores have stiffer jaws, which bend less as they chew and are more efficient for chomping on hard objects like invertebrate shells. But by examining the skulls of modern specimens, they learned, much to their surprise, that jaw stiffness relates to size, with smaller jaws being stiffer. Yet S. melilutra had massively strong jaws that were 6 times stiffer than the team would have predicted based on its body size. It chewed through much harder and tougher shellfish than its modern counterparts. Today's otters have learned to use stone tools to crack open shells, which could be why their jaws are not as strong in ratio to their body size as that of S. melilutra. Other researchers agree that the team's findings make sense, although there is admittedly not enough fossil evidence of prehistoric otters to be sure. It's even believed that the anatomy of human skulls changed as we adapted to tool use, making the application of the concept to otters not so far-fetched. Sacrificial offerings. Some very strange sacrificial offerings have just been discovered at a Mexico City archaeological site. Archaeologists working with the National Institute of Anthropology and History recently found the remains of a jaguar dressed as a warrior and a young boy dressed as the god Huitzilopochtli, the deity of war, the sun, and human sacrifice, very near the Templo Mayor, just behind the Metropolitan Cathedral in the historic center of Mexico City. The team of researchers believes that the offerings were put there by Aztec priests over 500 years ago, directly on the temple steps where the Aztec believed the center of the universe was located. The leaders of the Aztec civilization at the time are most likely buried somewhere close to where the archaeologists just found these sacrifices. There are supposedly 3 royal tombs that belong to 3 Aztec brothers that ruled at the same time, between 1469 and 1502. Their tombs have never been found, but Chief Archaeologist Leonardo Lopez Lujan says that could change very soon. They still need to dig deeper into the site, and that could take some time, but they are hoping to finally uncover an emperor's tomb. They have very high expectations, but are waiting on funding to continue. Viking dope. Did ancient Vikings smoke marijuana? Researchers have recently found traces of cannabis at the only verified Viking settlement on the mainland of North America, suggesting the possibility that these ancient warriors had been using cannabis for either medicinal or recreational purposes. This happened in 2018 when archaeologists in Newfoundland discovered pollen from the cannabis plant at the ancient site of Lansdowne Meadows, originally founded by the Vikings around 910 AD. Until just recently, scientists had assumed the site was only occupied for a brief time. But according to the new research published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the truth is that they may have lived there all the way until the 13th century, which would be around 300 or 400 years. To put that into perspective, Canada hasn't even been a country that long. As for the cannabis, Vikings probably traded their own goods with the local tribes, perhaps trading things like weapons or metals for things like meat, wild grapes, butternut squash, and marijuana. Desert camel carvings. Camels are pretty common in Saudi Arabian deserts, but 2,000-year-old life-size carvings of them? Not so much. In 2018, researchers who had been working in a remote part of northern Saudi Arabia uncovered a dozen reliefs and sculptures featuring both camels and donkeys carved into 3 rocky spurs, which are ridges extending from a hill or a mountain. Even though sand erosion had destroyed the sculptures somewhat, the carvings were still identifiable. Distinct from other carvings seen in the Saudi desert, the camels as well as the donkeys, mules, or horses are all shown unharnessed and grazing in a natural environment. One carving shows a camel meeting a donkey, which is not often seen in rock art in the area. With no tools or other artifacts found there, the mystery still remains as to who carved the animals and why. But with researchers believing the region was more of a rest point for caravans rather than an actual settlement, we may never know who felt so compelled to honor these animals with the stone carvings. Human Skull Tower. Archaeologists excavating a building in the center of Mexico City have discovered an Aztec tower of human skulls. Known as Huaytzompantli, it is a circular tower made from human skulls that was part of a skull rack from the temple to the Aztec god of the sun, war, and human sacrifice, Huitzilopochtli. Located near the Templo Mayor archaeological site in Mexico City, which the Aztecs called Tenochtitlan, it measures roughly 16.4 feet in diameter and dates back to the late 15th and early 16th centuries. The site was first uncovered in 2015, and by 2017, archaeologists had discovered 484 skulls. In March of last year, they found 119 more skulls, bringing the total to 603. The skulls belong to men, women, and at least 3 children, according to Rodrigo Bolaños Martinez, an archaeologist with the National Institute of Anthropology and History. It was extremely unusual to find children's skulls. Something is happening that we have no record of, and this is really new, a first in the Huaytzompantli, he said. His team members said that it's likely that some of the skulls belong to individuals who were sacrificed to the Aztec gods, while others were warriors. But through their sacrifice, they all were made sacred, turned into gifts for the gods, or even personifications of deities themselves. The team says that human sacrifices were a daily ritual in Mesoamerica, and that these gory practices were carried out with the purpose of renewing nature and the continuity of life itself. The Aztecs displayed freshly severed heads on tzompantli, or skull racks, a practice that was common among several Mesoamerican societies. After they were done being exhibited, the skulls were transferred to the tower. Hernán Cortés and the Spanish conquistadors he led on the conquest of Tenochtitlan in 1521 witnessed human sacrifices and were absolutely horrified by the practice. Researchers believe that the Huaytzompantli is one of 7 similar structures that once stood in the area, based on contemporary accounts of the city's capture by Cortés. They also believe that the conquistadors destroyed the other structures as soon as they could. An ancient temple. The submerged ancient Egyptian city and once bustling trade port of Heraklion was discovered roughly 2 decades ago, about 148 feet beneath the surface of the Mediterranean Sea. Called Egypt's Atlantis, this lost city is full of mystery. It is difficult to get to, and the waters are quite murky. Even now, with our sophisticated equipment, diving in the cloudy depths is dangerous business. Much of what we have found has been thanks to scanning tools. In August 2019, though, divers went down to explore the remains of a large temple. As they approached, the columns loomed above them in the dark, and they also found remains of old ships sitting like ghosts on the bottom. Good news is they were packed with coins and jewelry. Underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio, who led the first underwater exploration of Heraklion, headed this more recent dive, during which the team found stone columns from Amun-Garb, the city's main temple. The recent discovery shows that much of the site remains unexplored due to thousands of years of sedimentary buildup. In addition to the temple remains, the divers found bronze coins from King Ptolemy II's reign, which lasted from 283 to 246 BC, Byzantine-era coins, pottery, jewelry, and storage utensils. This site is still revealing secrets many years later, and there is probably much more to be discovered. Evidence suggests that Heraklion was inhabited as early as the 4th century BC, and many scholars believe it was founded as far back as the 8th century BC. Historians are unsure how the entire city became submerged over 1,000 years ago, but they believe that it resulted from a combination of rising sea levels, seismic activity, and crumbling foundations. Mysterious enclosures at Stonehenge. Some very mysterious discoveries have just been made at Stonehenge, allowing archaeologists to get a better picture of what life was like around this famous monument 4,500 years ago. It all began when a controversial road tunnel beside Stonehenge was scheduled to commence. Archaeologists had to get in there ahead of the road tunnel before the construction workers so they didn't ruin any possible archaeological discoveries. And guess what? Live Science reports they found ancient graves almost immediately, including one that contained a pot alongside the remains of a baby at least 4,500 years old. Another pit nearby contains the remains of a woman who died in her 20s, her body crouched around a relatively ornate pot, or beaker. These remains were most likely people from the Beaker tribe, a mysterious ancient civilization. The archaeologists also found a bizarre earth enclosure that they can't really figure out. Made up of a pattern of buried ditches, it seems like it was made to surround something. The enclosure was discovered slightly south of the graves, but it was created about 1,000 years earlier. According to Matt Lavers with Wessex Archaeology, the enclosure had traces of burned flint in the soil. He says this could indicate that some kind of dirty or smelly activity took place within the enclosure. What exactly that activity was? Well, nobody is really sure. Shipwreck treasure. Archaeologists were left shocked when they discovered the remains of an amazing shipwreck just off the coast of Panama. The biggest surprise from this discovery is that researchers believe the vessel could have belonged to the infamous Captain Morgan. The discovery involved researchers from Texas State University who were diving at Laja Reef. They unexpectedly found a chunk of the hull of a ship named Satisfaction, which historians know belonged to Henry Morgan, the Welsh privateer, plantation owner, and lieutenant governor of Jamaica. Captain Morgan had his settlement in Port Royal, from which he raided various settlements and owned 3 huge sugar plantations. Captain Morgan even targeted Panama City back in 1671, attacking it after landing on the Caribbean coast. But during the assault, Captain Morgan lost an estimated 5 vessels. This newest wreck is believed to be one of those very ships. It was even discovered with unopened cargo boxes, treasure chests encrusted with corals, and 6 iron cannons slowly being corroded by the salty water. And while Captain Morgan's body, of course, wasn't on the ship, a small piece of his history was, and that alone makes it a fascinating discovery. And in case you were wondering, yes, this is the infamous Captain Morgan that is still being used today on the rum bottle. Panabaswami Temple. This temple has been a fascination for historians and treasure hunters alike. Many people, including locals in the surrounding area, believe the temple is not only the richest temple in the world, but is also the mother of supernatural sites. It's an ancient and sacred place with golden walls and rooms filled with legendary treasures. Gems, silver, diamonds, coins, crowns, thrones, impeccably crafted statues, trillions of dollars worth of valuables, and one enigmatic secret. Beneath the holy and divine abode are 6 mysterious chambers. They are just known by the first 6 letters of the alphabet, chambers A, B, C, D, E, and F. The story goes that in 2011, a retired IPS officer, Sundarajan, filed a petition to the Supreme Court to open the temple's unknown treasury. A 7-member association was appointed to look into the unaccounted wealth of the temple and make an official record of it. 5 of the 6 vaults were opened, and the treasures inside shocked the world, with estimates of its value reaching $1 trillion. But Vault B remains closed. Rumors swirl around the mystifying vault, protected by 2 enormous cobras on the doors. Like most hidden treasure stories, the vault is not only off-limits, but many also believe it is cursed, and whoever goes into the inner sanctum will be severely punished. But how can anyone know the value of what lies in the vault if everyone is afraid to open it? If it's even real. Centuries ago, Maharajas performed special ceremonies where they weighed local princes approaching adulthood and then donated an equivalent amount of gold to the temple. Could all that gold still be hidden inside? When an audit was performed on the assets of the temple, it showed that a massive amount of gold pots and gold bars had gone missing from their repositories, with rumors of a secret tunnel that would allow someone to plunder the temple's riches and squirrel them away without being seen. Some wonder whether the vault could be the final hiding place of the missing gold. Until the Supreme Court rules on whether the vault can be opened, and whether researchers can put the rumors of an ancient curse out of their minds long enough to find out, remains to be seen. Thanks for watching! Which discovery did you think was the most mysterious? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!